got a quorum.
Okay, well, then I think we can call this meeting to order.
And just
Um,
so you know, Andrea, we have in the boardroom Paul and Alana.
Great. Um, do we have any agenda adjustments?
None for me.
Okay. Is there anyone from the public who would like to make a comment?
Yes, it's Kimberly Clark, Andrea.
Okay, go ahead, Kim.
I recommend John Moore be general manager for Green Mountain Transit, and John Moore does a very good job at GMT for what he does. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Any other members of the public? Okay. I think we can move on to the consent agenda then. Um, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Also move, Andrea.
So we
Thanks,
got a,
Paul.
I'll second, Andrea.
Thanks, Susan. Okay. We oh, any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Um, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstaining? Okay. I think that's an approval. And then looks like we can move on to the audit. Clayton, do you want to introduce that, or are we throwing
Yep.
to
So Nick is coming up to the table, and I think he's going to
great.
introduce our auditor, who is on. Oh, I had him. Oh, there he is, Christopher Matt. And but Nick will do the introductions.
I was gonna pull up our presentation too, Clayton.
Okay.
It's on the shared drive, so.
Oh, okay. So
Just because Chris had a little bit of trouble doing it last time, but.
do you want to just send it to?
Can you also let people in?
Okay.
Well, why don't we just, hey, Chris, do you have the presentation? Can you try pulling it up?
Sure can, Nick.
Okay, thanks. Well, while Chris is pulling it up, I'll do some introductions. So today we're joined by Chris Matt, our HR Smith. Chris really managed our audit this year. So in the packet, you should see the single audit, the management letter, the SAS 113 letter, or 114, I can't remember what number it is. And I just want you to know this went in front of the Finance Committee last week, was recommended for approval. But we'll go through the presentation with you folks again. Thankfully, it's not super long. And Chris, you can start it, and then I'll take over. You know, on the kind of figures.
Nick, do you have it up on your screen or do you need me to put it up on mine?
Could you pull it up?
Sure can. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As Nick said, my name is Chris Matt. I'm an audit manager with RHR Smith and Company, and had the pleasure of doing the FY25 audit for Green Mountain Transit. Brief little table of contents of what we're going to discuss today.
Hey, Chris, could you go into presenter mode? It's we're kind of just seeing the boxes. I feel like this is probably our last time.
So I think just the button right there on the left from the beginning.
Yeah.
I tried that last time and didn't. Hold on a sec.
I think you need to close that box that's in the front. There you go. Just hit from beginning. See if that works. Okay.
Well,
You wanna let me drive real quick? I'll pull it up. Thanks. All right, Chris, I'll pull it up. Sorry, I should have emailed this last. Oh, I'm in the wrong fiscal year, that's why. All right, can everyone see that? Sorry about the delay. Great. All right, Chris, go ahead.
First thing we're going to talk about real quick is the responsibilities of both our firm and Green Mountain Transit. The responsibilities for Green Mountain Transit, of course, are to design, implement, and maintain internal controls, to be responsible for the selection and use of appropriate accounting policies, provide information to us as requested, and essentially to have a really good understanding of financial and compliance related details that accompany all of the grants that you guys apply for. Our responsibilities are to perform an audit in accordance with AICPA guidelines. Essentially, what our job is to make sure that the policies, procedures, and controls that you guys have implemented are being followed. To maintain and make sure that we are doing everything with the proper accounting standards, and to also evaluate key factors and assumptions used to develop accounting estimates, and lastly, to make recommendations on how to improve the control environment. This next slide, this is what you pay us for. This is the independent auditor's report. Good to say that you guys received our highest opinion of unmodified. Great job this year, and it was an absolute pleasure being able to work with Nick and the staff.
Okay, I'll jump in here. So we're gonna go over some figures. It's really balance sheet, income statement. Some of these you've kind of seen. Obviously, we bring monthly financials to you folks at the finance committee, but the full board probably hasn't seen a lot of these figures. But like I said, I did include the full audit in the packet. So we're looking at a number of balance sheet items here. You've got kind of a 3-year look back. I would say the only thing I have to say on this slide is, you'll notice there was a pretty big drop in cash. I just want you to know that was really just a movement into our investments line item. So if you look on the balance sheet, you would see an even larger increase in the investments line. So we've taken advantage of the higher interest rate environment. A couple of years ago, we started a brokerage account because we had some excess working capital. And I'm happy to say we've generated, I think, close to $500,000 in interest over the last couple of years. So that's been really helpful to the authority. Not a dramatic change for 24 to 25. 23 to 24, you can see there was a pretty big uptick. That really was driven by net position changes in our fixed assets. So 24 was a big year for, 25 was a big year for fixed asset purchases. And that's really what drove those changes in both the total assets and the total net position. Same thing with liabilities. There wasn't a dramatic change from year to year from 24 to 25. Just want to point out, 2.8 million of total liabilities. 50% of that is long term, and really the long term is entirely made up of CTO, which is about $1 million of that liability. Moving on. If I can get it to switch. Okay, great. So this is just a breakout of our net position. So think of that as what is left of the company after we pay all of our bills. You can see that, you know, the majority of our net assets is not really liquid or isn't liquid. So, you know, it's really made of capital assets, as you would probably expect for a transit company. So most of that is, you know, obviously the buses, the fixed assets that we have. So we only have about 15% left, and not even all of that is liquid either, for working capital needs. That's why we, you know, management came up with kind of another measure called unrestricted, undesignated. We'll go over that a little bit later. But the restricted, that 5% is primarily the money we set aside to match our grants for capital purchases. So that's our local capital match fund. Just looking at you know, the different tiers of equity that we have over the last 3 years. So if you look at our net assets, it's broken up into several categories. Like I said, the net investment in capital assets is our fixed assets. Restricted is really for our local capital match, and unrestricted is really the working capital needed to run the business day to day. Same thing, not a ton of change from year to year, from 24 to 25. Same reasons that there were changes in 23 to 24, just a bigger year, as I mentioned, for fixed asset purchases. There wasn't really a whole lot of fixed asset investment in 25, so that's why there wasn't a dramatic change. You can see that, you know, the restricted account has been spending down slightly. Part of that is not only just purchases that we're doing, but we did do some purchases over the last couple of years that were primarily funded by local match, mostly on the rural side. So we did purchase some vehicles with 100% local funds, so that did take a little bit out of that account. Jumping to the income statement, or statement of activities, I should say. More volatility here. I want to point out, you know, the purchase of services, that's really fares coming back online. And that's why you're seeing, you know, a pretty solid pretty solid reduction in federal subsidies. You know, we had fares and other grants really increase in 25, and that took pressure off of our federal fund, the need for us to spend down our federal 307 funds. So that's a very good thing. State subsidies also fell a little bit, and then local subsidies, which is the assessments that go out to the urban members, you know, had a pretty consistent growth rate over the last couple of years. And then other income did drop slightly. That's mostly made up of like advertising income or miscellaneous revenue, things like that. Jump into rural, same thing, a lot more volatility here. You know, looking at 24 to 25, I'd say the biggest item that we saw that changed dramatically was the purchase of services. And that's really our Medicaid contract with Vermont Department of Vermont Health Access. Oh, great. What is this? You've been signed out because we're currently signed in. Okay, great. So yeah, that we saw a downturn, or a reduction in the revenue that we received year over year in Medicaid. I just want to point out that can be volatile from year to year just because of the methodology that VPTA has come up with on how folks are trued up. So if one partner makes a gain and other partners make losses in the following year, you will have to, you know, kind of allocate some of your current year revenue to that other person to make them whole. And that's really what happened to us in 25. So we had some gains in 24 that we had to pay back in 25. So that's why the revenue went down. Other grants increased over the last couple of years. VTrans has really shifted a lot of our federal grants from 5311 funding to CMAQ funding. Part of that was really when we started MyRide. They moved a lot of that to CMAQ and some other seasonal service routes as well. And we categorize CMAQ in the other grant section. So that's why you've seen other grants increase and you've seen federal subsidies decrease. And the real rationale for that, beyond the fact that just like that's the flavor of funding that VTrans has, is because there's a more attractive match with that funding. So CMAQ only requires a 20% local match, where 5311 could be as high as 50%. And then none of the other items besides, you know, I mean, state subsidies jumped up quite a bit in 24. But other than that, there wasn't like any real dramatic swings year over year. Looking at our expenditures, this is again also not quite as volatile. Transportation expenses were up about 5%. We're looking at the urban side here. Capital fund expenses were pretty steady. This really just represents the capital expenses that we do that we don't capitalize net of our local match in the current year. So these are just really, this does not reflect all the capital expenses that we've had. It's just the ones that are not capitalized but on the balance sheet. And then depreciation, again, kind of pretty steady up year over year, kind of reflecting just the growth of fixed assets on the urban side. On the rural side, transportation expenses also grew, however, at a higher clip, about 7.5%. Capital fund expenses were light. In fact, our local match contribution was higher than what we expensed in the given year. And then depreciation, again, consistently kind of increasing, reflecting just continued capital investment and also just a higher cost of the fixed assets that we're purchasing. And you can take it from here, Chris. I think this is the last slide, to be honest with you, but.
So when we're all said and done, there was really no big recommendations to make as far as controls or policies go. Nick and his team did a phenomenal job. We talked about it during the finance committee meeting. It's not just Nick, it's Tammy and everybody else that was involved that made it a very pleasant and smooth audit.
Happy to take any questions. I know that was pretty quick, but we are looking for approval of the audit so we can upload it to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse and also make V-Trans happy because they expect our audit timely. But I'm happy to go over anything. And like I said, everything that we got is in your packet today. Does anybody have any questions for me or Chris? Okay, well, I'm going to stop sharing and.
Andrea, I will move that the board approve the audit as presented.
Okay, I think I see a question from Chapin. I didn't see a hand. Oh,
Mike, quick comment is a comment, not so much a question. I just want to say, as a former member of the finance committee, and as we transfer a bunch of our rural service off to other rural entities, we have provided exemplary financial stewardship of both urban and rural systems within one organization for many years. This is a continuation of another solid audit. I just want to give a huge shout out to the GMT team for that, and just to emphasize to our partners that we have continued to be stewards of the public dollar effectively, despite having the most complex system of any transit entity in Vermont. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
thanks, Chapin. Okay, if there are no other, I don't see any other hands. So back to you, Paul, for that motion.
I move that the Board of Commissioners approve the 25 audit.
Great. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. That was Alona, right?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Okay, looks like we have an approved audit. And oops, lost my agenda. And we can move ahead to the architectural and engineering RFP.
And so we are about 20 minutes ahead of schedule. And so I think Matt would be the one who would be leading.
I'll actually be jumping in on that one, Clayton.
Oh, excellent. Connor, then I'm going to let you jump in on that one. Connor, please proceed.
Good morning, everybody. This should be fairly quick. There's a memo in the packet, but just to summarize, in early December, we went out to bid on our next 5-year architectural and engineering contract. We've successfully used this type of contract for the last 15 years. So that's 3 contracts of this type in the past. This is the contract that we use to secure an architectural firm to act as a general contractor, essentially, to manage a team of engineers for various capital projects, repair projects, really anything that we need architectural and engineering support. This type of contract's been instrumental with delivering our capital program over the last several years, and has been really beneficial. That contract is currently, the current one that we're on is operating on an extension. It was originally expired in October, and we went out to bid in December. So at the end of this month, our extension will be up, and we went out to bid to request proposals. We had good interest from local firms as well as a few regional ones. This is a 2-step procurement process. So we first request technical proposals from the contractors. And then later, once we have ranked all of the firms, we request price proposals from the highest ranked firm. Different to previous contract cycles, we've given ourselves the option in this contract to award to 2 contractors the identical contract. Our goal here is to give more capacity to our architecture and engineering firms. In the past, we've run into issues when we have one firm getting bottlenecked when there's multiple concurrent projects going on. So with the slate of projects that we have with our recent capital award through the 5339 program, we expect that over the next 5 years, there's going to be significant amounts of projects going on, and we're going to need the architecture and engineering capacity to be able to deliver those on time. Again, that is an option that we might execute. We're currently in negotiations with our top-ranked firm. We request pricing proposals. We requested a pricing proposal from them 2 weeks ago, and we expect to be concluded with the negotiations with that firm as well as our second-ranked firm if we do choose to request pricing from them by the end of the month as well. So we weren't going to have the award ready to present to you guys by this meeting. So we're asking for a delegation of award authority to Amy and Paul for the end of the month or early March. And there is a suggested motion at the bottom of the packet or the memo. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Connor. I have a 3-part question.
Sure.
Would it be possible to share the firms that responded to the RFP, the top 4 ranked firms? And then can you clarify, so you're thinking of contracting with 2 different firms, and then do you have if you could remind me of the budgeted amount this year for that service?
Yeah, so I can certainly share the firms with you. I would have to confer with Matt. Since we're still in negotiations, we might have to keep that confidential until those are wrapped up. But yeah, I can definitely follow up with you on that. In terms of budget, we are expecting that this will probably be a $250,000. It's over our small purchase threshold, but this is a task order based contract, so it only is utilized when there's funding to put towards it, so grant funding towards it, and then it's term limited, so it's a 5-year contract, and then each year the price is fixed, so that's how we're achieving cost containment. Basically, there's negotiated pricing for every year.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's anything's programmed in the 27 capital budget for this, but Matt can speak to that.
Matt, are you available to speak to that?
Is that
Yeah.
So, I mean, in terms of budgeting, like these are mostly contained, the projects that we have for this, like our capital projects, typically contain a set aside for architectural and engineering design work. So that's all captured within the project budgets.
Yeah, we wouldn't budget for this unless we had the funding for it. And the main thing is that we would want to budget the local match, and that's something that will go through the process before we spend any money.
Yes, my apologies. I had trouble taking myself off of mute. So that is correct. We do have a number of the 5339 capital projects that were awarded in the FY27 capital budget. So A&E services for those projects would come out of those capital lines in the capital budget. And like Connor said, this is a task order based contract. So really we have a contract ceiling for the overall contract, and task orders would be executed against that ceiling. But the way capital, you can't really project spending amounts until you receive the funding for the projects and get the task orders in place for those projects.
Not sure who I'm directing the question to, but what do we have? What is our purchase policy around delegation of authority? I'm not familiar with the concept of.
I guess I can't name the policy, but there's something we've done many times in the past.
Yeah, I don't know if it's directly in our purchasing policy, but
So I think that when we revised it last year, we included language for this. And again, this is going to be back to Matt. Although Connor, you may be able to answer it.
Yeah, I apologize. I should have put that in the memo. No, we did amend the purchasing policy last year. I believe the governance committee did to allow for this situation. We've previously used it on our fuel procurement, our IFB for that, as well as several other capital project related projects over the last year. But I can also send you that section after this meeting.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, was it, what, Andrea, sorry, I have another, I just
Oh,
wanted
yeah,
to
go
follow.
ahead.
Now that Matt, that you're here, just, would it be possible to understand who responded to the RFP and then the ranking?
I'm reluctant to share that in an open meeting while negotiations are ongoing.
I mean,
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess I'll just say I'm a little bit, I don't have a vote because I'm an alternate, but I'm a little bit reluctant to just take an action to delegate an authority to two individuals without knowing any of the context of it. Of potentially, in the future, we could look to having maybe a short executive session where we can get, because that is contract negotiations, get a lay of the land in order to authorize that delegation. It just seems like a
Application.
so last year, the governance committee reviewed our purchasing policy, provided recommendations to the full board that included this, and the full board adopted it. So just to make sure that we're clear that this is not a governance committee issued policy. I guess I'm a little surprised that something that we've used before is now not acceptable. And so I think that if there's concerns on this matter, that we should go through the governance process or look at that policy and not derail getting our work done.
Okay. Yeah, so just to clarify, what you're concerned because in a month that existing contract expires and you want to start an architectural project, you want to have someone onboarded and ready to issue a task to them by the end of the month. Is that's why the timing is of concern?
Yes, and also that was just when our extension expires. So yeah, we were hoping just to marry that up with our next contract with the 5339 slate of projects ongoing, as well as various other facility projects that we've been putting on hold, waiting for this contract to be ready to go.
And the task orders, that projects that you have underway right now with the current engineering firm and architecture, will that task order continue even through with the expiration of the existing contract?
So our intention with ongoing projects that are held under our current contractor, and they've been our contractor for the last 3 contract cycles on this one. They were the successful contractor. We would probably execute a sole source, or we would look to execute a sole source agreement with them in order to maintain the accountability on those projects with them.
Yeah, I think what's confusing for me is that because I do a lot of these contracts and our governing body always awards the contract and we don't ever delegate it. But that's one of unless it's under a specific amount, we certainly do on-call contracts all the time, and staff has the purview to work to sign those with notification before. So it's just I think it's the awarding without even knowing who it's being awarded to that's a little confusing for me, given the processes that I've always worked under with different municipalities. So that's all.
Tim, do you know if this was looked at by the FTA during the triennial? By any chance?
I'm not sure. I looked at pretty much everything during the triennial.
Right.
So what they do is we give them a whole list of all of our procurements.
Yeah.
Which we're required to do. And then they kind of pick and choose the ones that they want to look at.
Okay.
Matt, do you remember if they specifically looked at this one?
I don't recall offhand, but I will say that the purchasing policy was updated to reflect this process where purchases over 250,000, which would typically require board approval, that the board has the authority to delegate to the chair and treasurer for the approval of the agreements, and and as Clayton said, that has been performed for previous contracts.
And the purchasing policy was reviewed by the FTA.
Correct.
They did have us make the minor changes, but it wasn't specific to this.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Looks like Raj has his hand up.
Yeah, good morning. I'm ready to move forward on this, but I just want to say from a procedural point of view, to echo an earlier comment, wearing my municipal hat, it's odd to have an RFP process and then be asked to delegate authority during negotiations to 2 leadership or 2 board members without seeing any of the materials first. I realize we don't want to do that in open session. I just want to point out that while I understand we approved the purchasing policy change, this is odd to not have any information in front of us and then be asked to delegate that further. So I just make that comment for future reference that it's not so much a trust issue, but I don't know what I'm approving. So I just wanted to point that out. I'm not sure if that quite echoes the 2 comments from board members earlier, but it's not something we would have done municipally in the past, for me anyway.
Go ahead.
Right, Andrea.
Oh,
I don't know if you
hello,
can
is
see.
that- okay. Yeah, I
Okay.
can't see you, but go ahead.
So I would consider making a motion that we approve this on the condition that we receive the RFP, the ranking materials, and the and the contract. And that I think it would be helpful to also have the purchasing policy reviewed and maybe compared with, just, and it would be great also to, I guess the fourth would be to have a copy of the purchasing policy.
Is that an acceptable motion then?
Well, so that was a motion that was introduced and now somebody will need
Yeah.
to second to determine whether it's acceptable.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second, Raj.
Thanks, Raj. Okay. Is there any discussion? Susan, yeah.
Yeah, I just have a clarifying question. So does the motion mean that that staff cannot move forward until we've received those documents? Or do we need to receive and somehow approve them?
I think in my mind, the motion would allow the approval of the action, but it would also require those other items to be provided to the board. But it does allow the negotiation and award to go forward, although it and delegated to staff on the understanding that it is in the purchasing policy.
Just to confirm that the motion would be to approve delegation to the chair and treasurer with the understanding that these materials would be provided to the board.
Yes.
Is that already part of the procurement policy, Matt?
The delegation to the chair and treasurer is part of the procurement policy.
But there's not in the policy a follow-up to the board once it's been awarded?
I believe that is actually already in. Now, the sharing the specific materials is not part of that, part of the purchasing policy as part of this delegation, but the informing the board of the action that was approved by the chair and treasurer.
Yes.
Is part of that.
So, sorry, just to be clear there, Susan, was your question on timeline and when those documents would be shared?
No, I just wanted
okay.
My answer was, my question was answered.
Okay.
Just, curious to understand that the process could go forward and wasn't contingent on us reviewing and approving the documents.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing no hands. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. And it looks like next up is hearing from Nate.
Yep, Nate, come on. So folks may recall that our new contract with our urban operators has Nate both attend the meetings and provide a quarterly update. So thank you for being here, Nate.
Thank you. So everyone's been really brief today, so I will continue with that theme. So far, at the end of the fourth quarter, there were no grievances filed or submitted, and I think that's due in no small part to the work being done between labor and management, and specifically with Clay and Jimmy and Farhan. Still, drivers seem to be relatively unhappy with the current health insurance, but it's still better than what could have been done in the open market by far. Although many of the drivers have started to use new health insurance and are now starting to settle in with the workings of it, and there seems to be greater acceptance across the board. In the future, though, if we find, I believe we left an opener on insurance in the CBA, so if either side of the table finds there to be a better plan, either through Allegiant or on the open market, we would be willing to receive a reopener on that. Drivers are still concerned, very much concerned about the looming layoffs with the shortfall still looming over 2028. With that being said, drivers are still wanting to push for fare verification. They feel as though, and we've had a lot of roundtable discussions, some very heated amongst the driver pool, that it would be a benefit to both drivers and the company if we were to somehow find a path forward in moving forward towards having fare verification. And so I did a little bit of a back of the envelope math, as Jimmy likes to call it, as far as what does that look like. And there seems to be a vast difference of opinion as to what that would look like as far as a dollar figure wise. Clayton has presented in previous meetings that looks to be about somewhere in the vicinity of $57,000 shortfall. We figure that amongst the drivers to be actually much greater. So my question to the board here is, does anybody know how many rides we perform on a weekly basis? Any guesses?
Million divided by 52.
2 million? No, on a weekly basis. Do you know how many rides we perform?
20,000.
20,000.
Yeah.
We perform 1,566 rides a week, Monday through Sunday. Just on Monday through Friday alone, it's 1,350. On Saturday, it's 172 rides, and on a Sunday, we do a smaller 44 rides. So what does that look like for each month? That's just over 6,000 rides we do on a month. In a year basis, we perform 81,000 rides. In other words, that's 81,000 trips. So it's not people taking the service, that's trips that we do, that's departures from the DTC. So we figured, so how do you quantify that in figuring out how much loss it is? Well, we figured here's where the heated discussion comes amongst the drivers. I'm a very conservative person when I do these figures, so I'm figuring at least one person per ride on average is not paying the full fare. For whatever reason, you can call it whatever you want. So we figure that's about a shortfall of $81,000 a year that we're not cash, that we're losing in lost revenue. Some drivers like to look at it as like, losing money on every sale, but making up for it in volume, which we're not doing. It's not even close. Some drivers will argue that it's 2 to 3 people on average per trip. So you take that 81,000, you multiply that by 2, by 3, you're up to like $160,000 to $240,000 in lost revenue a year. That's what we figure based on our personal experience at the fare box. It's rare, it's becoming a more and more rare occasion when a person, even a cash fare, and they're paying the $2. And I could bring in driver after driver here and they'll tell you all kinds of stories about how people just don't pay the full fare for a variety of reasons. Most reasons for not paying the full fare we find to be legit, but they're not all legit. So with the fact that we're faced with layoffs coming up here by next year, and then we're being constricted by not collecting the full fare, drivers are becoming increasingly frustrated because it doesn't seem like we have any real say in our future within the organization. So that's a huge stress amongst the drivers. And lastly, we just learned last week that the urban side of GMT is going to be assuming all of the Montpelier links. And so we would like to encourage the board to reconsider the fare structure on the link and go back to the $4. We want the board to consider taking full advantage of the governor's return to work order, and we want to capture as much revenue off the link as much as possible. Any questions?
I do, just because I want to make sure that
I'd be brief.
Yep. Thank you, Nate. And so when you talk about the fare verification, we're talking about cash-based riders and when they get on the bus and whether they pay the $2 or the $1.
Yeah.
And so our, our operators are feeling the worry of the future.
Yep.
Because there may be layoffs, but yet they see people that are getting on the bus and from their perception, it seems like they're not paying the full amount, and therefore that's economically.
Correct.
That's okay.
I could, like I said, I could bring in driver after driver and they could bore you all day long with stories of people trying to game the system, if you will. We've actually had people who are about to put in $2 at the fare box and somebody will shout from the back, "It's only $1. You're only gonna put in $1." And because drivers don't want to have confrontation at the point of sale, we just let them ride for the $1. Because there really is no fair enforcement. So we are losing untold sums of cash on a daily basis. And we just figure I'm figuring it's about 80 to the tune of $81,000 a year, but my coworkers think it's vastly more, so. Yeah.
Alona?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was curious with I think there's some changes being made to the ADA fare system this year, and I was curious if with that verification, there would also be some type of identification, or is the more the verification, and this is, I'm not sure if this is a question to you or to you, sorry, to Clayton or to me. Is the verification that's being, the person that's coming on board for ABA to do verification,
Yep.
will that also result in some type of ID that would then be visible for drivers?
Nope, and so, what happens with the ADA process and Jamie can bail me out if I lead us in the wrong direction here, is that somebody will apply, they'll submit a written application to us saying, hey, fixed route doesn't, work for me for whatever the reasons are. We then evaluate that, and if they're approved, then we notify SSTA that they're eligible to schedule rides. They don't actually get an ID or anything along those lines.
Separate service.
So separate service, yeah. And so one of the things that we've been contemplating is whether or not we would want to centralize the discount passes so that essentially all of our cash fares would be the $2. And if people want the discount, they would have to go through a process where they would go to either here or the transit center, sign a statement indicating their eligibility, and then would use a smart card or their Ride Ready app to get that discount is one of the things that we're looking at. The issue that Nate brings up about the 57,000 is that when we heard from Chris in January, there was an estimate just looking at our fare box data that if we moved people from discount to choice, that it could potentially result in about $57,000 worth of additional revenue each year. And so one of the things that, from my perspective, I want to make sure that any system that we put in place would not cost more than 57,000, because then we would, obviously be losing money to have the verification. With the driver's perspective on the amount that we're losing being higher, that of course makes the threshold higher for, the cost of whatever program we would put in place. One of the things that I think will be challenging for us when it comes to the verifications is having the cash-based requirement. I do know that other FTA recipients are moving away from cash, especially when they have fare systems like ours, because not this year, but hopefully the following year, our Gen Fare system will be able to link up with, it's called the Incom network. And the Incom network is at just about every grocery store, drugstore, so the CVS that's right down the street from the transit center, somebody would be able to take a smart card and say, hey, put $10 on my smart card. And so that would meet the sort of the cash equivalency. And then that would create an entire account-based system that would make make discounts much easier to manage. And the benefit there would be is that from the driver's perspective, people would just come in and pay with their app, and there'd be no idea whether they're getting the discount or the full price. It would be totally invisible to the driver and the other riders.
And that would work with a card too.
Yes, the card in the app.
Would you need to have a smartphone to use that service?
No, because the card doesn't require one.
You would for the QR,
But you could also have, if you don't have a smartphone, you can use a smart card,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is an option we currently have.
Yep. Oh, Paul.
And we talked about this a few months ago,
Mhm.
and is what's holding us up getting to the next stage of using a different system, so that, as you talked about, smart cards.
Mhm.
So between now and then, we'll have to suffer from what Nate is talking about.
Well, I think that I had proposed that, yes, that we, wait until that before we implement the verification, but I certainly understand that people are nervous about losing their job, and asking them to wait probably feels like asking them to be more likely to lose their job. So I think that we might want to reconsider waiting and see what options that we have.
And can that process be moved up at all, or is there a point in time we have to wait until it can be implemented?
So the connection to the income can't really be pushed up, but if we were going to implement a different discount verification system, we could move forward on our own.
Sorry. And you may have done this in the past. I'm just wondering if you could walk us through the discount verification system, like what parties are involved and how that works.
And
Is
so-
it similar to ADA or is it different?
It's different in the sense that it's entirely self-selective. So somebody will get on the bus and they say, I am eligible for the discount, and then they pay the discount. Currently there's no verification system.
So it's, okay.
When somebody's using our fare system, they can't just download a discount pass or get a discount smart card. They do have to come to customer service to self-verify that they are eligible. Before they can get that. And I just want to be clear that when we went back to fare collection, that was a board-based decision that we not put barriers in place to people having discount fare.
And not just board-based, but the House Transportation Committee very much wanted us not to have a verification system and process.
We're limited on our ability to make people prove that they have a disability as well.
Charlene, go ahead.
I'm not sure what exactly I want to say, except that I appreciate how difficult it is for the bus drivers to be the line of decision making, and how it puts them feeling like they are being played. And I'm wondering, I mean, obviously, I think that this takes care of itself as we move away from cash in general. And I'm wondering if we can kind of push the moving away from cash a little bit faster. Is there a way to say, basically, if you want the discount, you got to use a card and come, and then not block the gatekeeping to get the card with the discount on it? I just would love to see this moved away from the bus drivers, because I've watched it happen on the bus, where you can definitely feel like people are trying to see if they can get a little prize kind of thing. That's it.
And so I don't imagine a scenario that the FTA would agree to us going cash free unless we had the income connectivity available. And so I don't think that we can force people to get a smart card or use the Ride Ready app for a discount at this time.
And Andrea, I don't know that I have quite the question formed, except I'd love to hear a little bit more from Nate about what the I heard sort of two things. One that the drivers would really are seeing this what it appears to them to be a pretty substantial problem, and also them being in the tough position of somebody's yelling from the back of the bus, pay this, and that puts them as sort of the enforcers. Have you heard from them their thoughts on how this should be approached?
Yeah, so we like to take a very simple approach, and that is we use it getting to the point where I say a lot of the older drivers, there's not many of those left. Most of them have retired, but the older drivers would tell me that we used to have a fare verification process in place years ago where you would have to come to the company, you were issued a card, it was a laminated card. The process in which you would acquire that card is outside of my wheelhouse, but if you wanted the discount at the fare box, you simply showed the card and then you paid the reduced rate and got on. We don't really care about the process in which you obtain that card. We just want to have some sort of proof that you're eligible. In many cases, it's obvious that you're either underage, overage, or disabled. Those are the only three qualifying factors for the reduced rate. And so it really, there is no question. We just let the person pay the dollar. But in some cases, you know, it's questionable as to whether or not they qualify for the reduced rate. And so having that card just removes all doubt. The process in which you achieve that card, we really don't care the process. We just know that there are other transit partners across the country who do have these programs, and they do make it a requirement that you show if you want the reduced rate. But when you talk to drivers, especially on the lower part of the seniority list, where they're restricted, not only restricted, but they don't want to have any type of confrontation at the point of sale. And then they're also knowing that their job is potentially on the chopping block. It's a huge frustration for them. So they drive around with that day after day with that in the back of their mind. And they're frustrated because they don't feel as though the company or the board is really taking any kind of action to kind of curtail this. And so some of the discussion we have, you know, in these break room type settings is, you know, how can the company go, say, for example, to Montpelier with their hand out asking for money when they feel as though like we're not doing everything on our part to, you know, capture as much revenue as we're entitled to, you know, on a daily basis. So it's a frustration of theirs. And unfortunately, I have to be their spokesperson for this, you know, these types of problems that they're having.
Thank you for sharing. And Jamie, to your note about house transportation, that's important to hear. I guess I'd also say that that may or may not remain the case now that we are a year plus into fare collection. I can certainly understand the legislature's reluctance to both bring back fares and then sort of and impose barriers, but I don't know that that's automatically something that we should assume is an ongoing concern upon, you know, the fares actually being back.
And you'll see that we're actually going to raise this topic with them today. And so that'd be a good opportunity for us to get exactly that type of feedback.
I'm wondering if it would be possible, based on what I'm hearing, which sounds like if you're using the app or the card, verification is built in because someone has self-verified at GMT at a different location and driver's not involved in that verification process.
Yes.
That there's currently no card being issued, and the concern is that becomes a barrier, similar to going and getting a card or an app. I'm wondering if staff could look into what that might cost and maybe possibly look at seeing if other providers, other service providers who maybe work with individuals that might merit a card could be able to provide that verification or do the paperwork if there's a way that that could occur so that it's less burdensome on the individuals. But if you could, I'm wondering if that's something, I know you're super busy.
Well, we can look into it. I think the problem that we have with going back to a card-based system is that essentially it creates other ways for people to game the system, which is, you know, we're not going to put a limit on the number of cards that they can have. Oh, I lost my disability card, which if they then pass on to somebody, that now they can get $1 fares, you know, for perpetuity. And we're not going to be able to have like a photo ID on that card that would, you know, prevent that.
When we had cards before, so I have been here long enough to kind of know what that process was. It was the same self-selection. We also received an ADA discrimination complaint for people who didn't feel that they needed to show an ID to be able to see they received the discount fare.
Yep.
So the board approved at that point, eliminating that process. I'll also note that if somebody is paying the $1 fare and they ride 5 times, they're paying $5 for the day. If we move them to our fare system, they're gonna cap out at $2. And then once they've spent $25, they're going to cap out. So
Yep.
we need to, I don't think it's going to be this massive revenue generator.
Yeah.
It's going to cap out, and then we're going to see likely less revenue from people who are frequent riders using cash.
Charlene, go ahead.
Clayton, I know you said that we are moving towards the system where you can go to CVS and pay. Do we have a sense of the timeline for that? And if you already said that, I apologize.
I believe it will be in 27.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah. Yeah, it's a multi-year process.
I mean, so
and it's only partially controlled by Gen Fair because it's is part of the reason why it takes longer.
I mean, so part of this is if we tried to fix this now, we would be coming up with a system that would incur new costs when we're already moving towards a system that takes care of the problem. Part of this may be just to really acknowledge to the drivers that we do recognize that this is a problem, but fixing it is probably more expensive than the revenue that is lost. In order to come up with people to man a new card system or something would probably be a pretty massive expense. And we do have a process in place where this is hopefully fixed within a year-ish.
It looks like we have Raj and then Dan, and I bet you Dan has opinions also about VTrans's perspective on discount verification. So Raj?
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge and just say that, you know, at the base of this, right, is severe anxiety by the drivers of their future and really great attempts to kind of find suggestions and find ways to kind of mitigate that. So I just want to say from the board, from my point of view as a board member, I completely hear this and understand it and appreciate it. And I just wanted to kind of make that comment that this is going to take a lot of time to figure out and it's going to be very complex. But, you know, we could sit here and try to come up with solutions, but ultimately I appreciate the anxiety and the stress and the frustration that drivers are feeling and appreciate you bringing it to us.
Very much, Raj. Dan?
Yeah, thanks. Lots of great discussion. I appreciate the boards having this conversation. You know, GMT being the only fare system in Vermont right now, but other agencies are considering it, like Marble Valley and Rutland, Green Mountain Community Network and Bennington. And so, you know, anything you do here might also be supportive of those agencies as they work to reestablish fares. Just on the, you know, the ADA side, you know, the GMT can decide to set a policy on how you can do your verification. Rather, you know, is it documentation? Is it an application process? Do they have to have an interview? All those things did exist. You know, Ross talks about a time, you know, when GMT had, you know, a staff person dedicated to this type of review. VTrans has been contributing to GMT's budget, you know, through mobility management funding, which is 5310 funding for older adults and persons with disabilities to help support this type of review. And so, you know, there may be a mechanism, you know, already in place that could be leveraged to start this. And VTrans, you know, we are, you know, there with you. If you get an ADA complaint, guess what? That ADA complaint usually comes to us as well. And so, so we would there be supportive and able to navigate those fields as well. And so, you know, just because there are barriers doesn't mean you shouldn't try to update and establish policies. You know, VTrans, you know, encourages all agencies to sort of manage it, you know, as you see fit. If you would like VTrans to review your policy and make sure the FTA is not going to, you know, run afoul of it, we're happy to do that. And so, yeah, that's just what I wanted to say out loud. And maybe this needs to be a future agenda item and, you know, have more thoughtful conversation around it.
Thank you, Dan. Any other discussion on Nate's report?
I will just say, I mean, I think, you know, the moving to a system where we're getting more people sort of on the app or card system may result in more people hitting that fare cap and sort of moderate the impacts of, whatever sort of fare controls that we were putting in place for cash payments. But I think that's probably still something worth doing. I think that broadly, it is really, we've talked a little bit about this, but I think broadly it's like worth sort of revisiting fares as a whole, and especially talking about that fare cap, and especially talking about the fare cap for folks who are paying full fare in the app and the card, because there are sort of other levers that we have to kind of address sort of what we're bringing in from fares. And I think it's worth sort of evaluating those things as a whole, in addition to evaluating this, keeping all of those things top of mind, in addition to this specific question. And Chapin, looks like your hand is up.
Yes, thank you, Andrea. Nate, thank you for being here. These quarterly updates are really helpful. Appreciate you coming to the board with your perspectives and concerns. Did I hear you correctly? Before we started talking about fares, you did say something that I just want to make sure I heard correctly. Did I hear that in Q4 there were no grievances filed by the union?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and that's due in no small part to our continued working relationship between labor and management, and it's kudos mainly to Clayton, Jimmy Johnson, and Farhan, working with the drivers on a daily basis.
Yes, and it's you and the drivers working in good faith with management as well. And I just wanted to give some light to that. Your conversation about the fares is important, and a whole full quarter without union grievances demonstrates the day-to-day good work of labor and management. So I wanted to draw attention to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chapin. Malone?
So I'm not sure how much time we had. We did not discuss the link. So if we have time, if you could address that would be great. But I also wanted to say, Nate, that I do ride the bus a lot, several times a week, and I always appreciate, the hellos from the drivers, and it really makes a difference in my days.
Thank you. So for the link fares, we've definitely heard from a variety of sources, including legislators, about returning that to $4. I could tell you that prior to the return to office requirement for the state, we had chose not to do that because link ridership was low enough that we were worried about it failing if we increased the fares back to $4. I think it's a fair question to see whether or not that would be the case now. The thing that we need to keep in mind is that the link represents about 3% of our overall ridership. And over 40% of the folks who are using the link are using an unlimited access program. There's not a huge pool of folks that we would get that $4 link, $4 fare from. The other factor is that then we would not be able to have the link service be part of the fare cap. And that may be a business decision that we want to move towards. But I think that one of the selling points made of us going back to fares, and I think that Paul made an excellent point, that going from zero fares to reinstatement of fares, there was a desire to make it less disruptive. But now that fares have been in place for almost 2 years, we might want to consider things that we didn't consider in 2024. And so we might want to look at that, but I think that not having it part of the fare cap is going to be an issue. And then lastly, we are allowed to change our fare structure within the GenFare system once a year. And so it was our hope that as we had sort of signaled on previous roadmaps, although it's been a while since we've had one of those out, where we will be looking at the entire fare structure in the spring and summer this year.
Just the follow up, is the Link still a city bus or is it a coach?
It's a city bus. Yeah. So I think that, Andrea, that it probably is time to move on to the legislative preview.
Oh,
Yes.
just one last thing, but if we could, Teamsters would like to ask the board for your support, and if you have any contacts through Montpelier to help move H-255 out of committee. Currently Martin Lalonde, who's the representative from South Burlington, is holding up that bill. It's the one that makes it a felony for assaulting a transit operator, so if you could reach out to Martin Lalonde or your state rep, and we would appreciate your support in getting that bill out of committee and onto the floor for a vote. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks, Nate.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think we can hop along to the legislative testimony preview from Clayton.
And so I'm gonna phone a friend with Jamie, and she's gonna pull up the slides that we're gonna be using today. And we're gonna run through these quickly so you can see what will be presented. We are hopeful that Amy will be finished with her accreditation visit and will be able to introduce us, which is why she is listed there. One of the things that we wanted to the House Transportation Committee to hear from Amy about is the fact that our board is volunteer based, and I think that's good for them to see that. And so just the different items that are going to be brought up. I'm going to be doing the high level reviews and recommendations, and Nick and Chris are going to be providing the details. Looking at the items that I'm going to be bringing up. Next slide, please. Just reminding them that this is, we're going to be talking to them only about urban issues. Next slide, please. I was going to talk about electric battery buses, and so I might as well do my update to you all now that I was going to do under my general manager's report. But that is that we've had New Flyer on site last week. We're going to have them, they're going to continue to be on site this week. And we are somewhat optimistic that we will be able to have these 5 buses back in the system by the end of the month. And so the last item that will, for the last bullet there, is that we have one more order to place as part of our 3-year grant cycle for this loan. And before making that order, we'll work with VTrans internally to see if we wanted to make a modification away from battery bus to another option. I think that the thing that's key to point out is that other than this recall, the buses had been meeting their expectations, and that this is the pathway forward that would get us, we think at this point in time, the most buses that we can get. Paul?
Just a quick question on that last slide. That's great news to hear that they've been on site. Is that anticipated to resolve the issue that headline them? Because I recall a temperature and charging and.
So what that will do is that we're setting it up so that there's a separate battery system for climate control, and that we will be using that to keep the buses warm, so that the batteries will be over the 41 degrees necessary. So the recall is still in place on those batteries. There's still a challenge with, they can't be charged over 75%, which is okay. We don't need them charged over 75% to do our routes. The key is to be able to accept the charge when it's with the battery being under 41 degrees. And so that's why we'll be keeping them charged. This will only be an issue for this winter because it was already part of our battery ramp up to have indoor storage and charging for this coming winter. So even if we fail to get these back on the road this month, we know that we'll have a solution for warmer weather next winter.
And then that's obviously a consideration in the final order as well. The fact that you're going to resolve this indoor charging.
Yes, and we have 6 buses on their way that we've already ordered, and they will have different batteries than the ones recalled, and so hopefully that, there won't be issues with that new battery.
Okay, 3 questions, and just, I know that probably, I would probably speak for our current council, that South Burlington is very supportive of using electric buses as a power option. I'm curious if you're able to change the contract, if you continue to procure from, I believe it's Flyer.
New Flyer, yeah.
New Flyer, to be more favorable. The technology, glitches and hiccups and failures. And then I'm also just curious, once you have the whole complement of electric buses, will they all be able to charge indoors?
Yep, so they'll be able to charge indoors. I can tell you that one of the things that frequently holds up procurements is that negotiation over the contract language. And so essentially we would need to be negotiating with our lawyer with them. And that could be, essentially a holdup of why we wouldn't want to go with New Flyer again in the future. I think that the bigger question when it comes to the battery bus pathway is what's going to happen with the next surface transportation bill, because we know that then that's the federal bill that funds public transit. We suspect that there will be no more Lono program as part of that. And what worries me is that some of the infrastructure that we're putting in place, how we will do our regular maintenance and upgrades for that if there's not a Lono program. And so I do think that there is still things that we want to consider before we continue moving down this pathway. So when I say that I think that it makes sense for us to move forward in this direction now, that, could change depending on how things play out. We're going to talk to them about the route performance report and the fact that of all of our urban and commuter routes, we only have one route that's economically non-performing, and that's the number 4 that's in Essex Junction. We've already talked with the town of Essex that's likely to be ending in fiscal year 27. And then just providing that metric there about our cost efficiency, providing 44% of the ridership for 21% of the cost. Next slide, please. We're going to point out that we've already gone through a 19% reduction in our service. And Chris was kind enough to point out that when I was using 16%, that failed to include the changes to the 11 and the number 1. So that's why it is 19. I had done a presentation yesterday where I said it was 16, and that's why that. So Susan, I know that you heard me say 16 yesterday. I want you to know why it's 19 today. We have seen a reduction in 22% of our drivers, and we've eliminated 4 non-union positions from a variety of backgrounds, because I just want them to see that we are already downsizing. Next slide, please. Remind them of our federal performance awards that put us in the top 13% of small transit agencies. And that our initial reductions made us more competitive for those stick factors, but our further reductions, since our further reductions would be on very economically high performing routes, would actually make us less competitive. Next slide, please. Going to talk about the fact that the federal surface transportation bill expires at the end of September, and that's where we get 65% of our operating and over 80% of our capital. And so really, until we know what that looks like, we're not going to know what type of service levels we're going to have in the future. There are some folks who are arguing for the federal government to get out of public transit funding, and if they were to carry the day, that would be somewhat cataclysmic for us. But there are competing interests that want to see more funding for competitive awards, which we do very well with. There are other voices that want to see an increase in funding to small and rural areas. So, you know, there's the potential for us to have losses and gains, which really means that we don't know what our service is going to look like beyond September until that new transportation bill is done. Next slide. Nick is going to go over his financial outlook, which I think is going to be very familiar for folks based on our previous budget presentations. Moving forward, Jamie. And I don't, any particular points, Nick, that you would want to highlight from your presentation for the board?
I think it would be helpful to just talk about 27 and 28 current projections right now.
Okay, so if we could move forward another slide.
I go to the slides that say 27 and 28 and then costs, well, they're in a row, so just start with 27.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Oh, if you could go back, I do want to point out that we are, this slide here, I think is critical, pointing out that the rural transfer is going to cost 1.1 million in extra expenses to urban. And that's something that, you know, is making our deficit, you know, deeper. And I think it's very important for the transportation committees to know that. And Jamie, if you could move forward to, there's the 27 outlook. And I'm going to let Nick,
so this is just really showing the budget that you folks approved for 27. As you remember, there's about an $840,000 deficit. Management has worked to kind of close that deficit slightly. So right now, and obviously things are still very fluid, right? Things change all the time, but kind of updating some of the assumptions we have with taking the link in-house and some reductions that we're going to do in staff on the administrative side. We've kind of narrowed that to about 560,000. Jamie, can you go to the next slide? And then 28, this is kind of where we currently stand right now, which is about a $3.2 million hole. Now I want to be clear that if in 27 we do permanent cost reductions for that 560,000, then we really only have to find 2.7 million. If we fill 27 with one-time funds, or I mean, not one-time fund, yeah, if we do it with one-time funds that aren't going to carry over into the future, then we really have to find 3.2 million. So there's kind of two numbers there depending on how we deal with 27. Good, next slide, Jamie. And then so, you know, this is kind of what that looks like. If we solve 27 with permanent cost reductions, that's really about a 10% reduction in what our budgeted driver pay hours are currently. And for 28, it's, you know, 30%. So it's significant. And that does include positions. So for 27, the deficit's smaller and the hours that were cut are smaller. And because of the union contract where we have to essentially get rid of all part-timers first, and then you can, you know, start laying off drivers, that really cuts the savings that you're going to get from cost reductions in the first year, and you get more the second year out, obviously, as you know, the hours jump up. You can go to the next slide, Jamie. And then just some risks to service reductions. You know, if we go down this road of substantial cuts are, you know, sort of a funding loss spiral. You know, if we cut service, we're going to probably, well, we are going to lose ridership. If we lose ridership, because our 5307 apportionment, you know, close to 50% of that is based off performance factors. If we lose those factors, we get 4 right now. You know, that's $2 million. So if we cut service, lose all 4 of those factors, that's another $2 million we need to find. So then you're really looking at probably 50% reduction in service. And then the other thing we have to remember is we get over $4 million from our local members. I don't know if we want to continue to invest in us at the same level if we cut 30% of their service. So that could be an additional problem that we're facing. So, you know, this could get very difficult very quickly. We don't find a sustainable solution to support our transit services. So that's really, I think that's all the slides I have. Do I have anything? Okay.
Can you talk about a sustainable funding source earlier in this presentation or just when you just say it?
We don't talk about it. We're not, frankly, a sustainable funding source really is not politically viable right now. The gas and diesel tax that was,
It's, you're just introducing it there, but that's not.
yeah.
We have in the past, I mean, they've had numerous studies from Steve Falwell. I mean, they know what the options could be.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Well,
Just two quick notes. Thank you for this overview. Earlier in the presentation, there were some notes about some of the components that GMT is doing well, and I think was it Dan gave a presentation last month, and there were a lot of really positive components to. We're the only people collecting fares. Almost all of our routes are not just hitting the metrics, but exceeding them. And then I think, there's been some really good examples of partnerships between GMT and your member municipalities, looking at the fundamental structures of how we can make transit more sustainable by having housing and services in areas that are, supportive to one another, and we're doing that. And so love to, make sure that, while we're being serious about all of the deep financial challenges, that we're also leaving the impression of all the things, some of the things that we're doing really well that are fundamental, including some successes of being nimble and looking at changing land use patterns. And if there's a chance to give a little plug on that, because I think that's a true success story and something that is underlying long-term success.
I think that you're absolutely right. I think the challenge with our ask for today is that we are looking to provide information specific to the fiscal year 27 transportation bill.
Yes.
Which is why the heavy emphasis on the financial metrics. I believe that if the committee follows sort of its normal pathway, once the transportation bill is in the Senate, then they open up their calendar a lot more to hear about things that are happening that are more positive. And so hopefully we'll do that. You're absolutely right, though. That's why I sort of already crowbar in talking about the stick factors, talking about being the top 13%, because that's something that we can relay quickly and has a financial attachment to it that is relevant.
Okay, thanks.
In your ask, are you asking them to fill both gaps in this fiscal bill? Are they able to do that?
So keep in mind that we are in alignment with the administration on the budget. Our job here is to tell them what will happen if the budget goes through as passed. And so that's why what we're letting them know is that if the governor's budget goes through for this year, and that there is no pathway for fiscal year 28 that they revealed to us for revenue, that we're going to start a service reduction process that will begin in this August, and we'll need to cut $3 million worth of our service by next year. And next slide, please. Oh, Chapin.
Yes, to that point, Clayton, is there a conversation? I understand what you just framed there, but given that there's this upcoming decision point, is there some action that can be foreshadowed to the legislature to kind of give them an easy win to start a process? VTrans is hitting funding shortfalls too. Is there a summer study group? Is there some action they can take now to start building momentum for the next session?
Yeah, and so I think that will come up in a slide or two.
Great, thanks.
Jamie, next slide. This is just letting them know how horrible those reductions will be to spur their action. And the next slide. The potential pathway is that if they want to avoid us starting service reductions again in August, that their pathway really is to provide additional funding in FY 27. The purpose of which would be to delay service reductions until after the election and after the surface transportation bill is in place. I'm not sure that we want to be having discussions with the legislature about long-term public transit funding. When we don't know where the majority of our what the majority of our funding will be.
Do you have a dollar amount that you can provide for this slide?
So we're gonna negotiate that with them.
You have, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I feel like if our delegation is talking to them, it's helpful if they just have a number to say.
Keep in mind, our position is that we're in alignment with the governor's budget. So, and that is what,
But our members probably want to keep our service, like whether that's in alignment with the governor's budget or not.
sure, and your members have had the opportunity to participate in our legislative process in
Yeah.
September.
Yeah.
And so I guess one of the things that I'm concerned about is that the leadership committee has spent a lot of time discussing our legislative position, has had Necrason in to give us the lay of the land. And this is the pathway that they're recommending. And we're not gonna pivot from that the morning of the testimony.
No, I understand. So what you're saying is no number, you're hoping that they'll ask you and you'll
Yes,
give them a number and then they'll suggest a number.
so,
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
so I would.
Yeah.
Use,
It's a negotiation.
I just wanna speak frankly.
Yeah,
Okay, so earlier in this meeting, we had a situation where we had a pathway that this board had worked hard
yeah,
to create a situation where we didn't have to bring everything to this group, i.e. the procurements. And then we have new members who are in, who were not part of that discussion, who were then like, well, I'm uncomfortable and are now derailing the board's previous work. And so our legislative position did not come out of thin air. It came out of, frankly, the last 6 months worth of work. And it is leading us to this spot. Next slide. We are gonna ask them to amend our statute just to make it clear that we can accept funds outside of the formula for assessment. This is something that we, Amy and I discussed a few weeks ago, that would be helpful. It did not go through the normal process of review by leadership. But this is a pretty minor change. And like I said, the purpose of which would be just to make sure that it's clear that we don't have to always use the formula for assessment for when we are pricing out service. Next slide, please. Here is where we talk about in January, the board had given the intention to see if we could increase fair revenue from 10 to 15%. And one of the things that I want to make sure is clear for both the board and the legislature is that that unlimited access agreements are part of that. And that would be where I'd be seeking to get the most gains. Next slide. And then we turn over to Chris, because they have expressed interest in our FAIR program, and specifically the distribution with discount riders and regular riders. And so he will be walking through that. We have this at the tail end, not because it's not important, but just because they will be driving the discussions and we need to make sure that we get through all the financials before we get to this part. And Chris, is there anything that you would
I think,
like?
you know, a lot of it is the similar slides from the presentation in January, but Jamie, if you go to the next slide, there's a couple new ones. So this one is sort of tying into Nick's piece about the transit debt spiral. So this is over the first 6 months of this fiscal year compared to last fiscal year, on average, a 10% reduction in service hours equals an 11.5% reduction in ridership. Not surprisingly, you'll see the Route 8 and the 10 to Route 4 combo, those have the greatest loss in service and also the highest drop in ridership. Next slide, please. This is also, one of the things that Clint has talked about here and with the legislature is sort of also talking about other things outside of the transportation committee. So one of the things that we looked at is the impact of people accessing jobs from our service cuts. And so across the board, if you place an imaginary rider in our system, if they have about an hour to travel for work, with our service reductions, on average, residents in Chittenden County can access about 3,000 to 5,000 fewer jobs. Next slide, please. So this is another slide. This is breaking out, this is a new slide. This is looking at vulnerable users. So we're classifying this as folks who are either accessing a discount rider in our system or those using the single fare vouchers. So this is just the percentage share of ridership for each of those routes. So you'll see like the number 6, there's a lot of social services along Neshoba Road. That's why that one probably has a 50% share of vulnerable users. I will note, you'll see the 1 and the 2 percentage wise are low because UVM makes up a predominant portion of that ridership, but the whole number is, you'll see 75,000. I can't read what the number 2 says, but it's a large number of rides that are vulnerable users, even though the percentage is much lower. Next slide. You've seen that one before. Keep on going. I think is there any other new slide? Oh, actually, keep on going. Keep on. So this one actually is around the fare capping. So this is basically looking at after somebody has hit the fare cap, how many more rides are people taking? So you'll see 50% of the people who hit the fare cap, they're taking 3 rides a day. So that's what that first column is there. And a large majority of that third ride of the day is borne by folks who are discount riders. So that would be, say, if we move the daily fare cap from 4 and 2 to say 6 and 3, it would impact about 25,000 rides. We probably would see also a reduction in that total number just because of folks' ability to pay for the service.
So this tells us when we increase our fare cap, the disproportionate percentage
Correct.
of folks are going to be our discount riders.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think everything else is similar to what we've all seen before. Yeah. Oh.
I do want to go back to your last slide just because it gets
UVMC one?
gets to Paul's point about the good news.
Yeah, so hopefully last intentionally.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to get through to this spot because here you can see the impact of University of Vermont Medical Center's unlimited access agreement with them showing a sharp increase in rides since that agreement came into place. And I will always thank Chapin for that. So thank you, Chapin.
December's rides were much higher, right? Isn't that
correct? I actually need to replace that graphic. It was 3.1 thousand rides. So I need to actually add that in. Thank you for pointing that out.
Excellent.
So yeah, let's update that. And I would welcome to get that back just for internal use here. It's great to show the success of policy driving ridership.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And that is the presentation. And Andrea, I'm sorry that all of the time that we saved earlier has been blown up. And I'm going to recommend that I provide a written general manager report covering the items listed. And that we move straight to committee reports and discussion of committee operations, especially because I know that Susan has wants to show the visioning charter.
Okay, we can do that. And the legislative testimony is important. So I'm glad we spent time on that. Okay, so then let's hop to committee reports. And leadership committee met, discussed many of the things that we talked about in this meeting. Do we have a finance committee report?
What you have in your packet is a very complete financial report from Nick. And then we spent time on the audit, so that was the substance of our meeting.
Great. Let's see. And then I think right now it's just visioning committee. So let's talk visioning committee.
Yeah, great. So let's see. We The Vision Committee has met once. We met on January 29th. Our second one is actually scheduled for this Thursday at 4 p.m. The minutes to the first meeting and the agenda to our second meeting have been posted on the website. So at our first meeting, and I guess I should say one of the things that I'm hoping to hear from you today is sort of approval and support for the charter that we put together. So that was one of the first things that we worked on at our first meeting. I apologize for not getting that into our board packet. It was sent around to all of you. I can try to get it pulled up on the screen if that would be helpful. But the charter essentially defines our committee's, purpose, authority, scope, what we're going to do. So we decided that we're going to be focusing on high-level visioning statements. So we're hoping to establish overarching goals that are measurable and possibly time-constrained. And our thought is that these will then be used to drive the development of goals, actions, and work plans at the operational level so that there's logical consistency in all that we do. We're also going to review our mission and vision statements and try to develop principles that staff and the board can use to guide decision-making when we're presented with trade-offs. So one thing that we talked about, we are not going to be doing sort of blue sky brainstorming. Instead, we really want to ground the strategic plan in our current fiscal and policy realities, but also create space to identify new directions and opportunities for GMT as it continues evolving into an urban-only system. So to make sure that we're not recreating the wheel, we're going to be looking at prior GMT planning efforts, and we're also going to be looking at some best practices from other transit agencies. Regarding timing, we want to complete this work before we start the update to the transit development plan, which I believe will happen around October. And regarding public engagement, we are thinking that we would like to reach out to some key stakeholders like VTrans, CCRPC, CATMA, and some others during the process, and then ask the broader public to provide feedback on the ideas that emerge from the planning process before finalizing a plan. So that's about it for now. Again, I'm just hoping that there's support for this idea. I would love your feedback if you see anything that you think we're missing. We plan to keep you updated at our board meetings on our work. And of course, you're all welcome to attend our meetings.
Andrea?
Yep, Paul.
Just want to congratulate the committee on getting their charter put together. I thought it was a very good charter. Looks like it's going to carry you through the time you need. And so I would move that the board approve that charter.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Looks like no. So I will all those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Susan. This is very thorough work, as always.
And Andrea, if I could provide a quick update on the rider experience and access council.
Yes.
And so I'm very happy to report that we put out a call for applications to join this council. Folks may recall this is what we created after the JEDI committee came to a conclusion last year. We had so many applications, in fact, that one of the things that we're able to do is look at our previous friends on the Jedi Committee and say, thank you for your service. But we've had enough new applications that, you know, we're gonna start with a fresh group of eyes. And I'm gonna let Jamie talk just briefly on what you can expect ahead for them.
Sure, so that group will start meeting quarterly in March. So Clayton and I reviewed the applications last week, and by the end of this week, folks who are on that committee will be notified. One thing that I'm hoping that group can start working on is we're working on an ARP Community Challenge grant. And I'm hoping that group can help us through a visual wayfinding exercise of our system. We've heard a lot of feedback about signage, navigating the bus system, things like that. So that's what I'm hoping this rider experience committee will focus on. In addition, accessibility on board our vehicles, and just sort of general, you know, what from a rider perspective, you know, how is GMT as a system to navigate. They will also be active in planning activities with Chris and his team. So between our quarterly meetings, they will help host outreach events. And, you know, if we move to like a town hall style planning process, that group will be really active in that as well. So I've been trying to be really careful not to completely create the agenda for this group. I'd like for them to be able to get on board, learn about the organization, and then create a work plan as a committee. So
thank you very much, Jamie, for working in that direction for us.
It's great. And I'm excited to hear what comes out of that committee and what writers on that committee have to say about, you know, things that can make this system better. Oh, Paul, yeah.
Since that's a new committee, are you going to create a charter for your committee?
yes, and then we'll give updates. It'll be quarterly, but we'll give updates at the board meeting as well.
And separate from the charter, folks may recall that you all had approved a rule that established the committee. And so that provides a lot of the guidelines for how it will operate.
Great. Okay, so it looks like we're 5 minutes ahead of schedule now, and the last thing on our agenda is commissioner comments. So unless there are other things to close out the committee operations, I'll open the floor to commissioner comments. Okay. Looks like there are none. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn 10 minutes early.
So moved.
Thanks, Chapin.
And I'll second.
Thanks, Susan. Any discussion?
I think that you should make sure that you let Amy know that when you ran the meeting, there was no problem with being done 10 minutes early.
Yeah. I will give a full report to Amy. Great. Oh, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? Well, with a resounding yes vote, it looks like our meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Congratulations, Andrea, for
Thank
leading
you,
us through.
everyone.
Thanks, Andrea.
Good job.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Didn't forget Robert's Rules of Order hardly once.
That Robin guy's a jerk anyway.